For 20 years, the cold, ruthless CEO, Lee Jun, had never been moved by a woman. His heart, once open to love, had long since hardened after a series of betrayals and heartbreaks. Now, at the peak of his success, he had no time for relationships, choosing instead to focus on expanding his empire. He had become a man of steel, a man who believed that emotions only got in the way of achieving greatness. Yet, everything changed in an instant when he crossed paths with a young woman who had no idea who he was. It happened one early morning as Lee Jun was heading to a business meeting. His expensive black sedan sped through the streets of the city, the world outside a blur of flashing lights and billboards. But when his car came to a sudden halt, he had no idea that the woman he was about to meet would shatter the world he had built around himself. A girl, no more than 25, was standing right in front of his car, her eyes wide in shock as she clutched her bicycle. For a moment, Lee Jun didn't know what to do. He sat in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, the weight of his thoughts heavier than ever. His usual cold demeanor was now on display, and he stared at the young woman with a certain detachment. But she wasn't the kind of woman who cowered in fear. Instead, she gave him an apologetic smile and slowly moved her bike out of the way. The moment their eyes met, something unfamiliar stirred inside him. She wasn't like the women from his world, the polished, well-dressed socialites and businesswomen who had always surrounded him. This woman had an innocence about her, something raw, something real. Her name was Lin Shui, and she was nothing like the women Lee Jun had encountered in his high society life. Lin Shui was a simple country girl with a bright smile and a carefree attitude that contrasted with the world Lee Jun had constructed for himself. She worked at a small local cafe, but more importantly, she loved riding her bicycle every morning through the quiet streets of the city. This was her moment of peace before the hustle of the day began. Little did she know, this routine would soon intertwine her fate with a man she had no reason to even think about. From that first meeting, Lee Jun couldn't shake the image of Lin Shui. Her presence was an enigma. How could someone so unassuming, so far removed from the high-stakes world of business he was accustomed to, captivate him? The very thought troubled him. He couldn't understand why she stood out among the sea of faces in his life. Perhaps it was the way her laughter seemed to lighten the air, or how she spoke without a care for status. Her words filled with a genuine honesty he had forgotten existed. Maybe it was her determination, her resilience, the way she never apologized for being herself. As the days passed, Lee Jun found himself thinking about her more often. He had seen her a few more times, each encounter leaving a strange, lingering feeling in his chest. Despite himself, he began to find excuses to visit the cafe where she worked, pretending it was just for a cup of coffee. But he couldn't deny that there was more to it. There was a pull, something magnetic, drawing him to her. Lin Shui, on the other hand, had no idea of the storm brewing in Lee Jun's heart. To her, he was just another rich man who thought the world revolved around him. She had no interest in the cold, business-driven men who seemed to populate the higher circles of the city. She preferred the simplicity of her life, the quiet mornings on her bike, the calm routine of her job, and her dreams of something bigger, but not at the expense of her peace. But life, as it always does, has a way of throwing curveballs. One fateful evening, after yet another brief encounter, Lee Jun found himself on the road again, heading to a high-profile gala that was important for his company's future. He didn't expect to run into Lin Shui, but there she was, walking toward the venue, her bicycle parked outside. She was wearing an elegant dress, her face glowing under the streetlights. He hadn't expected this side of her, the grace she carried, despite the simplicity of her background. For a brief moment, It felt like time stopped. She turned to look at him, and for the first time, her gaze was not filled with the usual indifference. There was a spark in her eyes, a glimmer of curiosity. "Lee Jun," she said, with a smile that seemed to disarm him. "I didn't expect to see you here. Are you here for business?" His answer caught in his throat. "Yes, but I didn't expect to see you." It was a strange moment. She was still the same Lin Shui, the carefree girl who had bumped into his car all those weeks ago. Yet something had shifted. Lee Jun was no longer sure of himself. Was he ready to open up? Could he allow this unexpected woman into his life? His heart, so carefully guarded, was now at war with his mind. What was it about her that made him feel this way? They spoke for a few moments, her presence soothing his nerves more than he cared to admit. As they parted ways, Lee Jun couldn't help but feel a sense of longing in his chest. The more he tried to distance himself from her, the more his heart seemed to pull him back. He knew he was crossing into dangerous territory, but the truth was undeniable. He had fallen for Lin Shui in a way he hadn't thought possible. The next day, something unexpected happened. Lee Jun received a call from his business partner, asking him to handle a matter at the cafe where Lin Shui worked. It seemed like a coincidence, but Lee Jun wasn't sure anymore. Was fate pushing them together? He agreed, hoping to see her once more. But this time, he wouldn't be the cold CEO who had kept his heart locked away for years. This time, something inside him was willing to take a chance. As the chase began, both Lee Jun and Lin Shui would find themselves caught in a whirlwind of emotions, where their worlds collided in ways they couldn't have anticipated. But would Lee Jun be able to let go of his past and embrace the woman who had stolen his heart? Or would Lin Shui remain just another fleeting moment in his complicated, emotionless world? The next few days were a blur for Lee Jun. His mind, which had always been so disciplined and focused, now seemed consumed by thoughts of Lin Shuyi. He couldn't shake the image of her smiling face from his mind, and it bothered him more than he cared to admit. It wasn't just her beauty or the way she carried herself. It was the way she made him feel. For the first time in years, he was questioning his choices, his lifestyle, even his career. How could a simple country girl, with no interest in the world he came from, make him doubt everything? Lin Shui, on the other hand, had no idea what was going on in Lee Jun's head. To her, he was still the aloof CEO, the cold businessman who had always seemed so out of reach. Their brief encounters were just that, brief and fleeting. She had no intention of letting herself be pulled into the whirlwind of his world. After all, her life had always been simple and grounded. She wasn't interested in the power struggles of the business elite. Her dreams were different. She wanted to live her life peacefully, find joy in the little things, and never be swayed by the ambitions of others. But things weren't as simple as they seemed. Lin Shui had her own struggles. Her family was facing financial difficulties, and the small cafe she worked at wasn't enough to provide for them. She often found herself working extra hours, trying to make ends meet. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her, and sometimes, when she allowed herself to think about it, she felt trapped in a life that was far removed from the dream she once had. The last thing she needed was to get involved with a man like Lee Jun, someone who had more wealth and power than she could ever imagine. He was the kind of man who could destroy her simple, peaceful life with a single glance. But despite her reservations, every time she saw him, something stirred. Inside her, there was a pull, an undeniable connection, and it confused her. Why did she feel this way? Why did he make her heart race every time they spoke? She had always told herself she wasn't interested in the fast-paced, materialistic world of the rich. But with Lee Jun, it felt different. There was something genuine in his eyes, something that spoke to her in a way nothing else had before. As the days went on, their interactions grew more frequent. Li Jun found himself going to the cafe more and more, but each time he tried to speak to Lin Shui, she kept her distance. She was polite, professional, but distant. She didn't want to get caught up in his world. Not when she knew how destructive it could be. She had heard the rumors, seen how power and wealth corrupted people, turning them into something they weren't. She had no desire to become one of those people. Yet, no matter how hard she tried to ignore him, she couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he looked at her, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, it was all too much. Li Jun's presence had a magnetic effect on her, and it was becoming harder to fight. Every time she told herself to stay away, her heart rebelled, drawing her closer to him. One evening, as she was closing the cafe after a long day of work, she saw him standing outside, waiting by his car. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know why, but something about his quiet presence felt like an invitation. She hesitated for a moment before walking over to him. "Li Jun, is something wrong?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He looked at her for a moment, his usual cold demeanor giving way to something softer, more vulnerable. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lin Shui's heart raced, but she remained composed. "I don't think this is a good idea. You know I'm not the kind of person who fits into your world." Li Jun's eyes softened, and for a moment, he seemed lost in thought. "I know," he said quietly, "but there's something about you that I can't ignore. You make me question everything I've ever known, everything I thought I wanted." She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. "You're the CEO of a huge company. Your world is full of power, money, and people who only want to use you. I don't belong there." Li Jun stepped closer, his gaze intense. "Maybe I don't belong there either," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I can't deny what I'm feeling. I've never felt this way before. Not in 20 years. Her breath caught in her throat, and she took a step back. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered. "You don't know what kind of life you're asking me to enter." Li Jun's face hardened, the weight of his words settling between them. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. Whatever it is, I want to face it with you." The tension in the air was thick, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Lin Shui felt her resolve slipping, but she couldn't let herself be swept away. She had too much at stake. Her family's future, her dreams. It was all too fragile to risk on a man who lived a life she could never be part of. "I can't," she said finally, her voice trembling. "I can't do this. I won't let myself fall into your world. I won't let you pull me in just because you're confused." Li Jun's expression turned cold again, the mask he had so carefully built slipping back into place. "You don't get it, do you? I'm not confused. I know exactly what I want, and I want you, Lin Shui, more than anything." His words hit her like a punch to the gut. She wanted to run, to escape, but her feet wouldn't move. Her heart was telling her one thing, but her mind was screaming another. Was it too late to walk away, or had she already crossed a line she couldn't uncross? As they stood there, the distance between them seemed to grow wider. Even though they were standing just inches apart, the pull they had felt earlier was now a chasm, and neither of them knew how to bridge it. Lin Shui looked away, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't be with him. She couldn't let herself be dragged into a life that wasn't hers. But as Li Jun reached out to her, his hand trembling slightly, she knew that neither of them could walk away from this without it changing everything. The question was, could she really stay away from him? Or was this chase, this game they were playing, already too far gone? The tension between them was unbearable. and as Li Jun's hand hovered near hers, Lin Shui felt a rush of conflicting emotions. She wanted to push him away, to shut down the dangerous path they were treading, but at the same time, she couldn't deny the magnetic pull she felt. It was as if the universe itself had conspired to bring them together. Despite their differences, despite their worlds being so far apart. But before she could speak, the sound of a car screeching to a halt broke the silence. They both turned to see a black sedan pulling into the parking lot with a forceful jolt. The door opened, and out stepped a man Lin Shui recognized. Wu Heng, Li Jun's business partner. He was a smooth-talking, arrogant man who had always been a thorn in Li Jun's side. His sudden appearance sent a wave of discomfort through the air, as if he knew exactly what was going on between them. Li Jun, Wu Heng said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I see you're wasting time on this. Country girl. Lin Shui's heart sank. She had no desire to be part of any of Li Jun's business drama, and the last thing she wanted was to get caught in the middle of whatever power struggle was about to unfold. Li Jun's face turned cold, his jaw tightening in a way that made Lin Shui feel uneasy. She could tell something had shifted between them. The playful, conflicted man she'd been speaking to was now replaced by the ruthless CEO, the one who had built his empire with cold determination. I'm not wasting time, Li Jun said, his voice cold and controlled, his gaze fixed on Wu Heng. And don't speak about her that way. The tension in the air was palpable, and for a moment, Lin Wei wondered if she had made a mistake. Should she have kept her distance from Li Jun? Should she have never let herself get this close to someone so entwined in a world of power and greed? But before she could dwell on her doubts, Wu Heng turned to her with a sneer. You really think you belong here? He scoffed. This is a world for people with ambition, not for someone like you. You're just a waitress in a cafe. Don't get too comfortable. Lin Shui's face flushed. But before she could respond, Li Jun stepped between them, his stance protective. Enough, Wu Heng. I'm done with your disrespect, Li Jun said, his voice firm. There was no mistaking the authority in his tone. Wu Heng, for the first time, seemed taken aback. He paused, glaring at Li Jun, before muttering something under his breath and retreating to his car, his pride bruised, but his ego intact. For a moment, the silence felt like a relief. Lin Shui could feel her heart racing, her breath coming faster. Li Jun turned to her, his expression softer than before. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You didn't deserve that. She looked up at him, her emotions swirling. I didn't come here for this, she said, her voice shaky. I didn't come here for you to fight your battles for me. Li Jun's eyes softened, his gaze full of sincerity. I don't want to fight your battles, Lin Shui. I want to be with you, and I know I haven't made it easy. But I can't keep pretending that I don't care about you. Lin Shui took a step back, her thoughts racing. She knew that what they had was more than just a simple attraction. It was something deeper, something real. But was she ready to face the storm that came with being with him? Was she ready to dive into a world where power, wealth, and expectations would constantly threaten to pull them apart? I don't know if I'm ready for this, she said, quietly. This world isn't mine. I don't know if I can be a part of it. Li Jun's face hardened for a moment, the weight of his past decisions pressing on him. But then, he took a deep breath and stepped closer to her, his voice low and steady. You don't have to be a part of my world, Lin Shui. I just need you to be a part of my life. And I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. For a moment, she just stood there, her heart thundering in her chest. Then, without thinking, she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. The kiss that followed was nothing like she had expected. Gentle but filled with the promise of something much deeper. Something that neither of them could ignore any longer. When they pulled apart, the world around them seemed to fade away. The sounds of the city, the pressures of their lives, everything seemed to blur into the background. There was only them, standing there, with the weight of everything between them now shared. "I don't know what the future holds," Lin Shui whispered, her eyes searching his. "But I want to find out, with you." Li Jun smiled, his usual cold demeanor gone, replaced by something warmer. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said softly. "We're in this together." And just like that, the world around them seemed to shift. The chase was over, but their story was just beginning. As the sun set on the quiet street, the two of them stood side by side, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The road to happiness wasn't easy, and it was never going to be perfect. But for the first time in a long time, Li Jun felt like he had finally found something worth fighting for. And for Lin Shui, she realized that sometimes taking a leap of faith into the unknown was the only way to truly find love.